120 warships destroyed or disabled. 2 full carrier strike groups deployed across 2 oceans, supported by destroyers, submarines, and hundreds of aircraft operating in coordinated formations. Billions of dollars in naval firepower concentrated into a single objective: control the Strait of Hormuz. And yet, the strait remains closed. 95% of commercial shipping has vanished from one of the most important waterways on the planet. More than 3,000 vessels, cargo ships, oil tankers, container carriers, and support ships sit anchored across the Gulf, going nowhere. Engines are shut down. Crews wait in uncertainty. Supply chains begin to fracture. And the global economy bleeds at a rate of $40 billion every single week. No American ships have been lost. No major naval engagement has failed. Every Iranian submarine has been eliminated. Every major surface combatant has been destroyed or rendered inoperable. On paper, it is a perfect victory, and yet in reality nothing moves. The shipping lanes remain silent, because the most powerful navy in human history encountered something it was never designed to defeat. A problem not of strength, but of mismatch. And the solution to that problem did not come from a new generation of weapons or an advanced classified system hidden behind secrecy. Instead, it came from something older, something overlooked: a 50-year-old aircraft, an aircraft that military leadership had spent years trying to retire. At first glance, the situation seems impossible to explain. Modern naval warfare is built on dominance, on the idea that superior technology combined with coordinated force can control any environment. Carrier strike groups represent the peak of that concept. They are not just fleets. They are complete systems, floating airbases capable of launching continuous air operations, protected by layers of defense, supported by some of the most advanced sensors and weapons ever developed. These formations are designed to project power across entire regions, to control sea lanes, and to respond to threats at distances measured not in miles, but in hundreds of miles. So how can such a force struggle to secure a corridor that is only a few miles wide? The answer begins with understanding the battlefield itself, because the Strait of Hormuz is not defined by its width on a map. It is defined by how little of that space is actually usable. At its narrowest point, the strait measures approximately 21 nautical miles across. But that number creates an illusion of space that does not exist in reality. The actual shipping corridor, the only safe and navigable path for large commercial vessels, is dramatically smaller, only 6 nautical miles wide. 2 miles designated for inbound traffic, 2 miles for outbound traffic, and a narrow buffer zone separating the 2 lanes to prevent collisions. That is the entire operational space for global trade passing through this region. Everything outside that corridor is effectively restricted. This creates a highly controlled environment. Movement is predictable. Routes are fixed. And every vessel that enters the corridor becomes exposed both geographically and tactically. There is no room for wide maneuvering, no space to evade easily, no flexibility once a ship commits to the passage. This is not open ocean warfare, where ships can disperse, reposition, and operate across vast distances. This is constrained space, a narrow corridor filled with traffic, pressure, and constant risk. It is a battlefield where geography itself becomes a limiting factor, where control is not just about power, but about adaptation. And within that confined space, a very different kind of threat begins to take shape, because the challenge in Hormuz is not just about controlling water, it is about surviving inside it. Inside this narrow 6-mile corridor, the threat does not come from large warships. It does not come from submarines operating silently in deep water. Instead, it comes from something far smaller, faster, harder to predict, and far more numerous. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy operates more than 1,500 fast attack craft. These are not traditional naval vessels. They are small, lightweight, and often constructed from fiberglass or composite materials. Most weigh less than 15 tons. Some are barely larger than civilian speedboats, but what they lack in size, they make up for in speed. The slowest of these boats can reach speeds of around 50 knots. The faster ones exceed 70 knots, and some of the newest designs reportedly approach 100 knots under optimal conditions. At these speeds, they are not just fast, they are difficult to track, difficult to predict, and extremely difficult to engage effectively using systems designed for larger, slower targets. Each of these boats carries a weapon capable of damaging much larger vessels. Anti-ship missiles with a range of approximately 35 kilometers. Individually, a single boat is not a decisive threat, but the doctrine is not based on individual strength. It is based on numbers and coordination. The strategy is simple. Swarm, 30 to 50 boats attacking at the same time, approaching from multiple directions. Some closing distance directly, others flanking. Some drawing attention, others preparing to fire. The objective is not precision. The objective is overload, to overwhelm sensors, to saturate defensive systems, to force the defending ship into making impossible choices. Because in a swarm scenario, the question is not whether you can stop one target. It is how many you can stop at once, and how quickly you run out of options. But the most dangerous aspect of this threat is not speed, and not even numbers. It is cost. Modern naval warfare depends on expensive precision weapons, systems designed to eliminate high-value targets with maximum efficiency. But the swarm flips that equation entirely. Consider the numbers. An interceptor missile can cost more than $5 million. A fast attack boat may cost as little as $50,000. This creates a massive imbalance. Every engagement becomes economically unfavorable. Every shot fired represents a loss in value. And when dozens of targets appear simultaneously, that imbalance grows exponentially. Even alternative weapons struggle. Anti-ship missiles are designed for large vessels, not small, fast-moving boats. Deck guns can engage targets, but their rate of fire is limited compared to the scale of the threat. Close-in weapon systems can fire rapidly, but they carry limited ammunition and require time to reload. And that time may not exist in a swarm scenario. Fighter jets introduce another limitation: speed. Modern jets move at extremely high velocities, which is ideal for covering large distances, but not for identifying small targets in a crowded environment. At high speed, a pilot has only seconds to observe the surface below. In a corridor filled with civilian vessels, that creates risk, because misidentification is not an option. Helicopters provide better visibility and precision. They can slow down, hover, engage targets more carefully, but they carry limited weapons. Their endurance is restricted, and they remain vulnerable to small arms fire from below. Each system performs well within its intended role, but none are designed to handle this specific combination of conditions: high density, low-cost targets, rapid movement, and constant pressure. Now add the environment itself. The strait is not empty. It is one of the busiest maritime corridors in the world. Thousands of civilian vessels operate within the same narrow space. Oil tankers, fishing boats, cargo ships, support vessels. From radar, the picture becomes cluttered. From above, the surface becomes chaotic. And from the perspective of a weapons system, the battlefield becomes unclear. Target identification becomes the critical factor. Which vessel is hostile? Which one is civilian? Which one is about to attack and which one is simply passing through? And this decision must be made in seconds, because swarm attacks do not unfold slowly. They happen all at once, dozens of boats accelerating simultaneously, closing distance rapidly. At high speeds, they can cross significant distances in minutes. This compresses reaction time to almost nothing. Detection, identification, engagement, all must happen instantly. This is not just a test of firepower. It is a test of systems, of decision-making, of adaptability under pressure. And under these conditions, even the most powerful navy in the world begins to face limitations, because the problem is no longer about destroying the enemy. It is about doing so efficiently, sustainably, and repeatedly. At this point, the situation reaches a critical threshold. The Navy has control of the sea. It has eliminated major threats. It has deployed advanced systems designed for modern warfare. And yet, the problem remains unsolved, because the tools being used were never designed for this kind of fight. This is not a failure of strength. It is a failure of fit. And this is where the solution appears. Not from a new program, not from a classified system, but from something already in the inventory, something older, something overlooked. The A-10 Thunderbolt Roman II, the Warthog. At first, the idea seems counterintuitive. This aircraft was designed in the 1970s, built for a completely different battlefield. Its original purpose was to destroy Soviet armored formations in Europe, not to operate over narrow maritime corridors, not to engage fast-moving boats, and certainly not to support naval operations. But design is not just about purpose. It is about capability. And the A-10 possesses a combination of capabilities that align almost perfectly with the problem in Hormuz. At the center of the aircraft is its defining feature: a 7-barrel Gatling cannon, designed not as an addition, but as the foundation of the aircraft itself. The plane was built around the weapon. This cannon fires 30mm rounds at a rate of approximately 65 rounds per second. In a standard engagement burst of just 2 seconds, more than 100 rounds are delivered onto a target. Not missiles, not precision-guided munitions, but raw kinetic force. And here is where the equation changes completely. Each round costs only a small fraction of a missile, which means destroying a fast attack boat no longer costs millions. It costs thousands. This is not a minor improvement. This is a complete reversal of the cost dynamic. The defender is no longer losing economically with each engagement. Instead, the balance shifts. Sustainability becomes possible, repeated engagement becomes viable, and the swarm loses one of its greatest advantages. Modern jets are built for speed. They cross large distances quickly. They engage targets rapidly, and they exit the battlefield just as fast. But in the Strait of Hormuz, speed becomes a limitation. At high velocity, a pilot has only seconds to observe the surface below. In a crowded corridor filled with civilian vessels, that is not enough time to reliably identify a target. The A-10 operates differently. It flies slower, at lower altitude, and within a controlled engagement pattern. This slower speed gives the pilot something critical: time. Time to observe, time to identify, time to confirm before engaging. Instead of relying entirely on sensors, the pilot can visually assess the situation, see the details, recognize the threat, and act with confidence. In an environment where misidentification carries massive consequences, this advantage becomes decisive. The A-10 does not operate like a strike aircraft. It does not enter the battlefield, release its weapons, and leave. It stays. It flies in patterns, circling the engagement zone, observing continuously, waiting for movement, selecting targets, and striking repeatedly. This persistence changes the nature of the fight. Swarm tactics depend on coordination, on timing, on overwhelming force in a short window. But under constant aerial presence, coordination begins to fail. Boats hesitate, formations break apart, attacks lose synchronization. The swarm is no longer a unified force. It becomes fragmented, predictable, and far easier to defeat. Operating at low altitude in a hostile environment is dangerous. Small arms fire, heavy machine guns, improvised defenses from coastal positions, all pose a threat. But the A-10 was designed specifically for this kind of risk. The pilot is protected by armored plating. Critical systems are reinforced. Redundant controls allow the aircraft to continue operating even after sustaining damage. This is not an aircraft designed to avoid danger. It is designed to endure it. And that distinction matters, Because in a fight like Hormuz, survivability is not about escaping the battlefield. It is about staying in it, continuing the mission, and maintaining pressure until the threat is eliminated. At this moment, the equation shifts. The Navy's problem is no longer unsolvable. The swarm is no longer overwhelming. The imbalance is corrected, not through greater firepower but through better alignment. The right tool applied to the right problem. But even the A-10 does not operate alone. Because the final solution is not a single system, it is a combination. By this stage, the battle over the Strait of Hormuz has fundamentally changed. What began as a problem that overwhelming naval power could not solve becomes a demonstration of how warfare evolves under pressure. Because the final solution does not come from a single system. It comes from integration, from combining strengths, from building layers. The Navy continues to do what it was designed to do: maintain control of the sea, provide long-range defense, track high-speed threats such as cruise missiles and advanced aerial systems. Its destroyers and support vessels create a protective umbrella, ensuring that large-scale threats are neutralized before they can reach the corridor. The Army introduces another layer: attack helicopters operating at low altitude, capable of identifying and engaging targets that move beneath the radar coverage of larger systems. These helicopters provide flexibility. They can respond quickly. They can adapt to changing situations, and they can engage targets that require precision at close range. And then there is the Air Force, bringing the A-10 into the center of the equation, not as a replacement for other systems, but as the missing piece that completes the system. Together, these forces create something entirely different, not just power, but balance. High-cost weapons are reserved for high-value threats. Low-cost solutions handle low-cost targets. Each system operates within its optimal role, and the inefficiencies that once defined the battle begin to disappear. The swarm loses its advantage because its greatest strength, forcing expensive responses to cheap threats, no longer works. The equation flips, and once that happens, the outcome becomes inevitable. But the importance of this moment extends far beyond a single conflict, because what happens in the Strait of Hormuz reveals something fundamental about modern warfare. For decades, military development has focused on technological superiority: faster systems, more advanced sensors, longer-range weapons, greater precision, and all of these advancements are valuable, but they are built on assumptions about the battlefield, about the type of enemy, about the nature of the conflict. When those assumptions change, even the most advanced systems can struggle. The Strait of Hormuz represents a different kind of battlefield: confined, crowded, unpredictable, filled with both civilian and military presence. And in that environment, adaptability becomes more important than raw power. Efficiency becomes more important than complexity, and the ability to apply the right tool becomes more important than having the most advanced one. This leads to a critical question, one that extends beyond this moment, beyond this operation, and into the future of warfare itself. The A-10 is not permanent. Plans already exist to retire it, to replace it with newer systems, more advanced platforms, more modern technologies. But when the A-10 leaves, what replaces it? What system can provide the same combination of persistence, efficiency, and survivability? What platform can operate effectively in confined, high-density environments? What tool can handle low-cost, high-speed threats without creating economic imbalance? Possible answers exist: unmanned systems, autonomous drones, adapted aircraft designed specifically for these conditions. But none have yet fully proven themselves in this role, and that uncertainty matters, because the conditions seen in the Strait of Hormuz are not unique. Similar environments exist around the world: narrow waterways, high-traffic shipping lanes, regions where civilian and military activity overlap. These are the spaces where future conflicts are likely to occur. not in open oceans alone, but in constrained, contested corridors where traditional advantages are reduced. And this brings us back to the central idea, the lesson that defines this entire story. Victory is not determined by how advanced a weapon is. It is not determined by how expensive a system becomes. And it is not guaranteed by overwhelming force alone. Victory comes from alignment, from understanding the problem, from adapting to the environment, and from choosing the right tool for the situation. Because in warfare, the wrong tool, no matter how powerful, can fail. And the right tool, even one designed decades earlier, can change everything. So what do you think? Did the A-10 prove that older systems still have a critical role in modern warfare? Or is this just a temporary solution to a battlefield that is still evolving? And more importantly, what should replace it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Because this is not just a story about one aircraft. It is a question about the future of warfare itself. And if you want more detailed, cinematic breakdowns like this, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for the next episode.